Hello, 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 and welcome back to True Crime Lounge. I know it's been a good minute, and I have been so many other projects going on. I have so many other things happening in my life, a lot of personal stuff that I needed to get handled. So, those who are still following me, thank you. I know I do this a lot, and I don't mean to. It's just I had like I said, so much personal crap happening. It's not even funny. But yeah. Um, the marshmallow is still in my mouth. But if you're new here, please hit that like button, ring that bell for notifications. Also, please subscribe. So, episodes 153 through 155, we're going to be talking about the most famous Jean Harlow and her untold life. And here's the thing, she was only 26 with a life full of intrigue and scandal. In fact, she was just 16 when she got married the first time. And surprise, surprise, that lasted 2 years? Um, and it was at the age of 22 she was at the height of her success when she would marry a middle-aged German film exec by the name of Paul Byrne, and it was 2 months later that she was found dead. And it supposedly was self-inflicted by a gunshot and wound to the head. Now, studio execs at MGM were called before the police were, 2 hours just before the police had arrived to investigate what was left of the crime scene. Harlow was at her mom's house allegedly, and makes matters even more bizarre and weird because Barn was already married to another woman when he was exchanging his vows to Harlow. Interesting, huh? And his name was and the wife's name was Dorothy Millette, and her body was found in the Sacramento River 9 days after Paul Byrne's death. Keep in mind that she lived in a sanitarium at the time and may or may not have been visited by Byrne the night before his death. Just saying. So, we are. So, as you can tell, as part of our old Hollywood crime series, um, we are going to be talking about the Miss Famous Jean Harlow. And you're probably wondering, how does she tie into true crime? Well, to answer your question, we have to dive into this three-part episode special. Now, Jean Harlow was born an actress and who became known for playing bad girl characters. And she was a leading sex symbol in the early 1930s, and she was one of the most defining people of the pre-code era of American movies. Some of her nicknames included Blonde Bombshell, um, Platinum Blonde, and Laughing Lamp. She was in the film industry for 9 years. However, it led to her becoming one of Hollywood's biggest stars. And it also meant that her image was in the public eye. And in 1999, the American Film Institute will rank her as 22 on its greatest female screen legends list. Now, she first signed to business magnate Howard Hughes, and he directed her first major role in Hell's Angels, and after a lot of critically failed films, he would lose interest in her career. Her contract would be bought out by MGM, um, and her popularity would rival and surpass the top leading ladies such as Joan Crawford, Greta Garbo, and Norma Shearer. Now, she died at the age of 26 from kidney failure while filming Saratoga. MGM would complete the film with the use of body doubles and release it less than 2 months after her death, and it would be her highest grossing film in 1937, as it will be her highest grossing film in her career. So, let's talk about the early life of Miss Jean Harlow for a moment, because you gotta wonder, how did she become as famous as she did? So, to start off with, who was the young starlet that captivated Hollywood? Well, Miss Jean Harlow was born Harlene Harlow Carpenter in Kansas City. Her father was a Montclair Carpenter who would attend dental school in Kansas City, while her mom was Jean Poe Carpenter, who was the daughter of a wealthy real estate broker. Um, now, Jean and Mont's marriage was arranged. Jean was underage at the time, and she even grew resentful and unhappy of the marriage. However, they would live together in Kansas City in a house. Harlow's family would call her Baby, and it was a nickname that she grew accustomed to and endured it her whole life. It was not until Jean Harlow was 5 that she learned her actual name was Harlene. And when the staff at the students, Miss Bastos, finishing school for girls used her name. And she was always very close to her mom, who was extremely protected. And her mother was reported to have instilled a sense in her daughter that she owed her everything. Yeah, I think we see where this is going. And she was always, and her Mama Jean would always go. She was always mine, all mine, in interviews. And Jean Carpenter was later known by Mama Jean when Harlow achieved star status as Jean Harlow. Kind of confusing, right? Yeah, I would think so too. But when Harlow was finishing school, her mom filed for a divorce, and on September 29th, 1922, the uncontested divorce was finalized, giving sole custody of Harlow to her mom. And although she loved her dad, she did not see him often after the divorce. Um, it was in 1923 that the 32-year-old Gene Carpenter would take advantage and move to Old Hollywood and move to Hollywood. Anyway, she would move to Hollywood in hopes of becoming an actress, but was told she was too old to begin a filming career. She was enrolled at the Hollywood School for Girls, where she met Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Joel McCrea, and Irene Mayer Selznick, but dropped out at the age of 14 in the spring of 1925. Now, with their finances dwindling, Jean and Harlow had to move back to Kansas City after Skip Harlow issued an ultimatum that he would disinherit his daughter if she did not return. Several weeks later, Skip sent his granddaughter to summer camp at Camp Chautauqua in Michigan, where she became ill with scarlet fever. Jean Carpenter traveled to Michigan and cared for her daughter, and rowing herself across the lake to the camp, but she was told that she could not see her daughter. Now, Harlow next attended Ferry Hall School, which is now Lake Forest Academy in Lake Forest, Illinois. And Jean Carpenter, Mama Carpenter, for the remainder, just to make it less confusing, had an ulterior motive for her daughter's attendance at that particular school. It was close to her Chicago home of her boyfriend Maria Bello, and Harlow enjoyed cooking, and a few recipes were published in a newspaper and motion picture magazine. Now let's talk about Jean Harlow's first marriage. From 1926 to 1928. It was during Harlow Jean's freshman year of high school, which that she was paired with a big sister from the senior class who introduced the 19-year-old Charles Chuck Fremont McGrew III and an heir to a large fortune. And by the fall of 1926, Harlow and Chuck were dating seriously, and they were married at 1928. In 1928, Jean Harlow was also married that same year to Marina Bello. And on January 18th, however, Harlow did not attend Mama Harlow's wedding. So, in 1928, just 2 months after the wedding, Chuck McGrew would turn 21. He would receive part of his inheritance, and the couple will leave Chicago and move to Los Angeles, settling into a home in Beverly Hills, where Jean thrived as a wealthy socialite. McGrew hoped to distance Harlow from her mom with the move, and neither Chuck nor Harlow worked during this time, and they were considered heavy drinkers. Now from Now, from 1928 to 1929, Harlow began working as an extra, and she was living in L.A. and she befriended a young aspiring actress by the name of Rosalie Roy. Not owning a car herself, Rosalie asked Harlow to drive her to Fox Studios for an appointment. While waiting for Rosalie, Harlow was noticed and approached by Fox execs, and whom she told she was not interested. Nevertheless, she was given letters of introduction to Central Casting. And on, I forgot where I was. Okay, a few days later, Rosalie Worry bet Harlow that she did not have the nerve to go for an audition. Unwilling to lose a wager, impressed by her enthusiastic mom, who followed her daughter to Los Angeles by this time, surprise, surprise, Mama Harlow cannot stay away from her daughter now, can she? And she went to Central Casting, assigned to under her mother's maiden name, Jean Harlow. And after several casting calls from a number of job offers rejected by Harlow, Mama Jean finally pressed her into accepting work at the studio. Harlow appeared in the first film, Honor Bound, 1928, which was an unbilled extra for $7 a day, equivalent to approximately $128, and a box lunch, common pay for such work, and this would lead to an increase to $10 per day, and small parts of feature films such as Morning Marines and Charlie Chase, lost filming, Chasing Husbands in 1928, and in December of 1928, Harlow, as Jean Harlow, was signed a 5-year contract with Hall Road Studios for $100 per week. And she had small roles in 1929, Laurel and Hardy shorts, Double Whoopee, Liberty and Bacon Grabbers, and the last giving her co-starring credit. It was in March of 1929 that she parted with Hall Roach, who tore up her contract after Harlow told him, "It's breaking up my marriage. What can I do?" In June 1929, Harlow separated from her husband, who disapproved of her career, moved in with Mama Jean and Bello, and after the separation from McGrew, Jean would continue to work as an extra in such films as The Thing Called Love, Close Harmony, and The Love Parade, all in 1929, until she landed her first speaking role in the Clara Bow film, The Saturday Night Kid, and Harlow and her husband would divorce in 1929. So, let's talk about the Platinum Blonde star. Well, in the late 1929, Harlow was spotted by Ben Lyon, who was an actor filming Howard Hughes' Angels. According to and gives Angela head cameraman Arthur Landau, the man who spotted and suggested this to Hughes, and was reshooting most of the man who spotted and suggested her to Hughes. Hughes was reshooting most of his originally silent films and needed the actress to replace Greta Nielsen, whose Norwegian accent was undesirable for her character. Harlow screen tested and was given the part. And on October 24th, 1929, she signed a 5-year contract with Hughes, paying $100 per week. Um, and during the filming of Hell's Angel, she would meet MGM exec Paul Byrne, her future husband, for the first time. And Hell's Angel premiered in Hollywood's Grauman's Chinese Theater on March 27, 1930, and became the highest grossing film that year, besting even Greta Garbo, Talkie debut, and Anna Christie. Hell's Angel made Harlow an international star. Even though she was popular with audiences, the critics were not so enthused. And the New York performance was plain awful, though her Variety magazine conceded, "It doesn't matter what degree she possesses, nobody ever starved possessing what she got." Okay, that is it for this little segment. You can join me next time as we're going to be talking more about Jean Harlow and her many other films, like even something she did with Clark Gable. But I will see y'all next time. Y'all have a great day and enjoy this wonderful spring weather we're having.